As Ukraine's counteroffensive is still in its early stages, the Associated Press is now reporting major infighting among Russian President Vladimir Putin's lieutenants.
According to the former UK ambassador to Belarus, there are, quote, growing signs of deep dysfunction, anxiety, worry about the war, and real problems in marshalling the resources necessary to fight it effectively.
CBS News foreign correspondent Ian Lee joins us now from Ukraine. Ian, are there any signs that Putin is losing influence?
You know, that is a very good question, because everything you look at when it comes to Russia is really reading tea leaves. But for all intents and purposes, it does not look like Putin at the moment is losing any influence. According to experts, he does like to play his different lieutenants off each other. And this is something that is very common among strongmen leaders. They really don't ever have a number two, but a lot of number threes, because they don't threaten his position in power. And right now, it does look like we are witnessing a lot of his different lieutenants, whether it's the head of Wagner, if it's the Ministry of Defense, or other groups that are fighting in Ukraine, playing them off each other to keep him in control, but not threaten his control, but, you know, give each group its own little bit of room as they try to continue this war in Ukraine.
But Ian, at the heart of it, at least according to Gould Davies, is worries that the war isn't going well. How is Putin, who's been in power for over 2 decades, how is he handling that type of messaging getting out?
Yeah, so this is the tricky thing here, because a lot of experts believe that Putin isn't really getting the full message about how the war is going on here. And so you do have different leaders. So let's take Wagner, for example. Yevgeny Prigozhin. He has been very vocal about his displeasure about how Russia is waging the war, really directing his spite against the Ministry of Defense and Shoigu, who is leading that. And so you do have a lot of this infighting. You have different groups, too. You have Igor Gorkin, who was a former leader of the separatists in the Donbass region. He's been very vocal, very against how Russia is waging this war. And you have the Kadyrovs, who are the Chechens. They are also another faction in this fighting. And so you do have these groups. Each one of them is talking about how this war should be waged. And each one very careful not to criticize Putin, but to criticize the Ministry of Defense. And that is what we are seeing, that they believe that the Ministry of Defense isn't giving them the weapons that they need, them the ammunition that they need, and really doesn't have a real plan for how they're going to defeat Ukraine. And that's where you're getting a lot of this criticism. But the one thing that they're all very careful not to do is criticize President Vladimir Putin.
And Ian, what is the latest on Ukraine's counteroffensive? Because President Zelensky has said it's going slower than desired.
Yeah, we heard from the Prime Minister of Ukraine just yesterday saying that it is going slow, but that everything is going according to plan, that it has been successful. They say this isn't going to be a quick operation, and I think a lot of people were believing that it might be, because an earlier offensive by Ukraine was very swift in taking areas in the northeast of the country around the Kharkiv region, and so people thought they were going to be able to replicate that kind of success in this new offensive. But, you know, from the very depths of winter, everyone has been talking about this spring Ukraine offensive. Russia knew that it was coming. Russia has been able to dig in with tank traps, with mines, with concrete barriers, and with trenches. And so Russia was prepared for this. So it has been slow gains. And when we talk to troops who've been to the front lines, a lot of them say that first line of defense that Russia has, well, that gives away quickly. But the further you go, deeper you go, the more that Russia has been able to put up a stiffer defense. And that's something that they have encountered. They say it's very difficult. They say it's tough fighting. But, you know, the one thing that has stood out from all my interviews with all the fighters up and down that front line is they do believe they're going to win. They do believe that they will eventually succeed in pushing Russia out of Ukraine.
What a different sentiment than what you're reporting about what's happening in Moscow. Ian Lee, thank you.